Welcome, people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
TV, I felt like we would never get to this point, but it's finally almost playoff time, my boy.
We're
Finally
like
almost
game
playoff
80.
time.
For most of these teams, we're on like game 80. We've reached the end of the regular season. Look what we talked about the last few weeks. NBA awards, all NBA teams. We even had to make our own type of like all NBA games to recap the season. But now we are in postseason form. And we're going to give you a little bit of a sneak preview today because we're going to be discussing the biggest X factor for each of the top six in each conference. As of the day of recording, it is Wednesday, April 10th. So as of the day recording, we're going to go through each of the top six and talk about the X factor for each of those teams. And it could be player, it could be overarching topic as well, but that's going to be a pretty like sick episode for today. And of course, we're going to have the draft, and of course, we have the quiz, so you know it's going to be a hit your free throws classic. But before we get into that, we do have to do a little bit of promoting, of course. Make sure you follow our socials, our individual ones, at the Routine Jumper, at TV on Basketball. Those links can be found in the description down below. And in terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best NBA content. I'm releasing my final vlog for the Raptors vlog for this year. 15 games this season. Gonna release the final vlog later on this week, so be on the lookout for that. And of course, you're gonna find a bunch of podcast clips, a lot of our other series that we have over here, the Daily NBA Picks Challenge, which is coming to an end as well. So you want to be on the lookout for that as the final few days of the Daily NBA Picks Challenge happen. And then if you want to show love on any of our other platforms, YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast network, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you support in any way possible. Subscribe, leave a review. That really means a lot. Jay, are you ready to get into this? We're gonna be deep diving into some playoff basketball now, bro.
Yeah, man, this is the time of the season that we look forward to the most. Obviously, this is why we podcast right here. Is the moments where we get the deep dive into playoff basketball, because this is where the games really count.
This is where it counts. And we're going to do this a little different way. Sometimes me and Jay, we go with a back and forth, but we're doing things a little bit differently today. I got the East. Jay's got the West. I'm going to be starting off with the East here and going through each of my X factors for each of the top six. And we're just going to freeform and just discuss them as a whole. Jay, are you ready to do this?
Yes, sir.
All right, we got to go with, I swear this team has been like number one since like January. Probably even like November at this point. I feel like they've never like left the number one spot. But we're gonna start off with the Boston Celtics. And my X factor for the Boston Celtics is not even a player. It's late game execution. It's not that I don't like having the ball in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's hands at the end of games. Those are some of the best players in the league. You get the ball to your best players. That's usually a formula for success. But the Boston Celtics have found out time and time again when it comes to this season, when it comes to previous playoff runs, that's not going to work every game. Usually in the regular season, especially, they don't have to get to that point. That's why they don't have many losses in general, because you just end up battering teams in the beginning that these guys get to rest at the end of games. But when you are put in those situations, a la the Atlanta Hawks game, those type of issues can really show out, and those stars could potentially shoot you out of games, especially when you don't have like actual game planning going on during them, and then the other team ends up just breaking you down on the other end. They have the talent. This is the most talent the Celtics have had in this whole Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown era. I think this team as a general has a very good chance at dethroning the Denver Nuggets this year. It's just, are they going to beat old habits? And I think that late game execution, especially from previous years, and you can see it at times peeking its ugly head this season, is going to be the biggest thing to look at. It's not the talent on the roster. It's just how they're going to execute when they're down to these clutch situations, late game executions.
I think that's the most important thing when you talk about a team that's coming into the postseason, not really facing any real adversity over the course of the year in terms of playing these tight games. It feels like every single time that the Boston Celtics lose, it feels like the sky is falling, right? It's the Chicken Little meme.
Dramatic fashion ever.
Come on, man. I mean, just the other day, they play the Milwaukee Bucks and they get punched in the mouth early from 4 really, really good Brook Lopez splash mountain threes, and that kind of starts this avalanche of what ends up being a really tough night for the Boston Celtics, who couldn't seem to hit the side of a bar with a rock if they tried. And that's kind of how they tend to operate. And you just kind of hope that in the postseason, they're able to shake a lot of that off, because the reality of the situation is, despite this group not necessarily being in the postseason together, this entire team has significant postseason experience.
100%. Yeah.
I think we can make an argument that the person who might be the most wet behind the ears in this circumstance is probably Kristaps.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, everyone else has had you have Drew as a former champion, and then the rest of the guys have just been like staples. Whether even like someone like Derek White has been a freaking playoff, been in the playoffs since he was in the league because of the freaking San Antonio Spurs days too. So yeah, no, a lot of these guys are playoff veterans, probably besides Kristaps.
Yeah, so I mean, this is one of those things that when you've been the best team in when you've been the best team in basketball the entire season, and you have the kind of point differential they have that is practically historic, right? And you have this kind of lead above the rest of the Eastern Conference schedule wise, where you've pretty much locked up your spot at the top of the East. Probably I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was confirmed that they were basically going to have the number 1 overall seed. Basically, I mean, I agree with you. This is a team that hasn't faced too much adversity this year, and the only time that they have, it feels like it's just been as dramatic as it can get. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes now that every game matters significantly.
Yeah, no, it is, to be honest. And I just looked at this just recently. But when you look at these 4 of the last 5 games for the Boston, 4 of the last 5 losses for the Boston Celtics, mind you, they don't have a lot of losses. They only have 17. So a 5-game sample size is pretty big in this sort of circumstance. In the last 4 to 5 losses that they had, they were only able, the highest amount of points they were able to hit in the fourth quarter was 24. When you look at the Boston Celtics team, with all the talent that they have, and when they're in these close games, all of these losses have been by 6 or less. So the fact that you're only getting to 24 points as a most. By the way, 2 of those losses come to the Atlanta Hawks. You have a loss there to the Los Angeles Lakers, a loss to the Cavs where you freaking gave up a 18-point lead in the fourth quarter as well. Something has to change, and you could see it. If I'm them, I'm not. Of course, you're focusing on the winning because that's how you dominate teams. But when you look at those losses, you gotta really nitpick at those things, because that's going to be a difference between you being another Eastern Conference Finals participant and getting into the NBA Finals and actually getting over the hump finally. So there's not a lot of things to critique about this Boston Celtics teams, but with the talent they've had, especially for this many years, you got to notice these patterns, and late game execution is definitely the main factor here.
I definitely feel not too much more on the Celtics, honestly, just because of the fact that they've been running the table all year. We just need to see it now. They're the team that when you've seen them do this long, you almost are unimpressed by their regular season, to the point that, especially when you know what they've been capable of doing or maybe not doing in the postseason, we're just ready for big time basketball when it comes to a team like that.
Look, man, the regular season don't matter with this team anymore. It's all about the playoff success. It's just how they're going to do it, especially when you're in a 7-game series and they actually get the game plan for you every single night. So we have to see how that goes. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks, currently the number 2 seed. Doesn't feel like they're a number 2 seed, but here we are. My biggest X factor for them, I have a player this time, Malik Beasley. People don't realize that Malik Beasley is getting pulled from fourth quarters and that he has been heavily struggling since the beginning of March. He is still, by the way, this is a guy who is top 10 in 3-pointers made this year. He has been an absolute sniper. But since March 1st, he's averaging 12 points a game on the season. Since March 1st, averaging 10 points per game on 30% shooting from 3 on 8 attempts. This guy is making less threes than his regular season average, and attempting 3 more than he usually does. It's not been looking good for Malik Beasley. You have to, and you want to see how good he has been before that. 45% on threes prior to March 1st, and he hits three threes a game. There's a reason why he had so much hype like early on this season. There's a reason why he was in the 3-point contest at All Star Weekend. He was a sniper, but for some reason during these last 5-6 weeks or so, he's been getting pulled out for games from guys who have like not much, not even like playoff experience, but NBA experience as well. Like sometimes like he like people like AJ Green are ending games for the Bucks. People like Andre Jackson's ending games for the Bucks. Malik Beasley is obviously not the biggest name on the roster when you got Giannis and Dame, but he is someone who unlocks so much for them, especially in a spacing capacity. And when he's not hitting shots and like you can't have him in the game, and that's just gonna like, create like less space out there for the Milwaukee Bucks who need it desperately for Giannis to succeed. So if anyone needs to show up for playoff time, it's gonna need to be Malik Beasley.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it a step further. Like Patrick Beverly actually got the start last night against Boston, which was a unique lineup for them because Patrick Beverly had only started maybe 3 or 4 other games for the Bucks prior to that. Patrick Beverly's basically been coming off the bench all year, even dating back to when he was with Philadelphia. I think he only has 9 starts all year.
Yeah.
But he was a major part of bringing defensive intensity to the game the other night against the Boston Celtics. He actually led the team with 20 points, and I think he had like 10 assists too, which was a season high for him as well. So you can tell that Doc Rivers understands that there is a little bit of a shift taking place in Malik Beasley's game. Obviously, Doc has a familiarity with Patrick Beverly that helps him out to be able to know that he can rely on Patrick to be able to play significant minutes. And you do have to admit to an extent, Patrick Beverly does have a bit of a significant fit next to Damian Lillard in a playoff scenario where they're going to need real defensive intensity for 48 minutes. Like this is not a team that's going to win by trying to blow out guys. I know that the Boston Celtics game the other day might indicate otherwise, but like this is not a Bucks team that has the kind of offensive capacity that we've seen in years past where they're top 5 in offense killing folks. This team has been relatively mediocre offensively all year. Now don't get me wrong, they've gotten better over time, but this team is not lights out the way we thought they were capable of when we thought about the idea of pairing Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo together. Mind you, also guys like Chris Middleton, very slow year. He's kind of been getting it back together a little bit, but still struggling to create offense for himself. Brook Lopez, still a big-time defensive player, not as big of a threat from beyond the arc as in years past. Again, still shooting at a really solid clip, but the dangers are different. So I think that's where a guy like Malik Beasley comes into factor because what he's able to do in minutes against second units, which is not often, but mind you, not often during the postseason, but during those time frames is going to be really important. Malik Beasley could be a guy who could mess around and win them a game or shoot them out of the game. And that's dangerous from a guy who's not even considered maybe a full starter for your team this late in the year.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it looked like he actually carved out a role on the Bucks, and he's been like he played like really well next to Dame, and like I remember just seeing games where he would just start off games like absolutely firing from three and like hitting like 3 of his first 4 in the first quarter. Like we've seen him have those moments. It's just something about these last 5 weeks. I don't know if it was like an injury or something like that. I haven't been really like following along with Malik Beasley. I think he only missed like 1 game because of injury. But besides that, I mean, he's been playing all year, and like ever since, I mean, maybe it's like a poor performance from the All-Star game. I don't want to like in the All-Star 3-point contest, but I don't want to really blame it on that. But he's important to this team. They brought him in for a reason to be that 3-point shooter, and if he can't really provide that, then I mean he's like what Duncan Robinson from like what last year, 2 years ago, man. It's like that type of situation with Malik Beasley because he's not going to be a great positive defender. I mean he's not the worst, but he's also not the best. So he's got to excel at what he does best, and if he can't do that, then it's gonna be tough for the Bucks to get out of this, to even get out of the first round, especially the way that they're looking.
Yeah, the Bucks worry me more than almost any other team in the Eastern Conference when you think about the bar we've set for them in comparison to how they played throughout the entirety of the season. And honestly, this cash strain situation with Giannis Antetokounmpo basically limping into the postseason because he's not going to play the last 3 games of the regular season, it only makes me more worried because, for example, that unit the other night that started Patrick Beverly, that already had a low sample size. And he admitted in the post game presser, he's like he wants to be able to bring real intensity to that starting lineup, but he still needs to be able to get an understanding of how he fits in because he doesn't have a lot of experience playing with that group. Well, now you take one of the biggest cogs in that system out of it by missing out on Giannis Antetokounmpo playing in this rotation for the next 3 games at a pivotal time where, look, you're at a seed where you're going to mess around and play an opponent that you don't know until 36 hours before it's tip-off time.
Yeah.
And that makes it even scarier when you think about their situation. It's all hands on deck for a team like Milwaukee because they are definitely they made an all-in move with going after a guy like Damian Lillard. And so far it's been one of the rockiest, initial seasons for this kind of acquisition that we've seen in a while, aside from probably the Phoenix Suns this year.
Potentially. I mean, also the Lakers with Dwight Howard, too. That was like a rock.
Yeah, that's a good one, too. The Phoenix Suns this year is a weird one because they've dealt with a lot of injuries as well. We're not going to end up talking about them today because they currently bumped themselves into 7, got shellacked by the Clippers the other day. So, but those 2 teams, man. But Milwaukee in particular, yeah, tough spot.
100%. All right, moving on to the next team in the East, the New York Knicks. Now I have a player here. This player here has becoming kind of like found gold for them recently, and I'm going to say that he's going to be an X factor for them this postseason. Miles McBride. And this is important because, as you guys know, actually maybe if you don't know, Julius Randle's out for the season. He's getting shoulder surgery. Like, he got it this past week. So almost all of the offense is being put on the shoulders of Jalen Brunson. But you know what's been helping him over these past weeks after the trade deadline, because of the Julius Randle injury? Miles McBride. He's found himself a role where he has had some absolute bangers of games where he's hit 5+ threes. He's averaging 3 or more threes since March, which is insane for someone who wasn't really a part of the rotation earlier in the year. And it's just important because you need to have someone other than Jalen Brunson creating offense and providing offense for this team. You got to rely on that for Julius Randle over the past few years, but that now is gone. Who's going to be next? DiVincenzo relies on a lot of creation from other people. OG Anunoby's not creating his own offense. Trust me, I've seen him play the Toronto Raptors jersey for 5 years. He ain't creating the offense. Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, good centers. They're not going to be the ones you're going to be throwing it down to the post. It's Jalen Brunson or nothing most of the time. So you just need something to alleviate the pressure off of him. And Miles McBride is probably going to be that guy. And he's going to be really an important clog in that rotation come the playoffs.
See, the thing that's interesting about Miles McBride is I just wonder how Tom Thibodeau decides to ride this lineup out. We talked about this around the trade deadline when they picked up Bogdanovich and, Burks and all these other things where it was just
McBride has been more reliable than them, ever since the trade.
That's the part that's so weird. We brought those guys up, and here's Miles McBride. Miles McBride has played more minutes in the last 4 to 5 games than he did combined the entire year before that. It's insane. No, it's actually crazy. He's been basically playing 45 to 48 minutes, basically the last 4 to 5 games plus, and the last 13 games in particular, he's been balling for them.
Yeah.
So the part that's so weird is Miles McBride, to me, is a microcosm of a bigger issue that the New York Knicks have going into this postseason, which is they are missing out on shot creation significantly with the loss of Julius Randle. But they have so much depth to make up for it. The question comes down to when you are in a postseason setting, when you're supposed to drop down to your most reliable 8 guys, and maybe we can do this exercise right now. I'm not sure if you want to do it now or if you want to wait for a different pod, but who would you say are their most reliable top 8 when you think about how everybody has been playing this season? Because I think who we thought it would be at the trade deadline and who we think it is now, I don't know if they're the same team. I don't know if this is the same grouping.
Yeah, because you could honestly go like 10 deep with this team. But the thing is, none of them is gonna alleviate what Jalen Brunson does, besides Miles. So like when I like pick him as an X factor, is because do they really have a choice besides him? I mean, you're not gonna ask Josh Hart to run the offense. You're not gonna ask him to shot create for himself.
Mhm.
I mean, like it's a tough situation for the Knicks because again, they have depth. It's completely reliant on those two guys to create the opportunities for them. And when you lose one of them in Julius Randle, like where do the other guys fall in place? Because they're going to be asked to do a lot more than they're accustomed to and what they've been asked to do like initially as part of this team.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I'm looking at the depth chart now, and I guess you can make an argument that their 8 is set. Brunson, DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, that's 3. OG, that's 4.
Hardenstein,
Hartenstein, 5. Mitch Robb, definitely, that's 6. Miles McBride, I have to assume that Miles McBride is going to get the
has to
bump over
be.
Alec Burks.
Yeah,
Has to.
and then you got McDonovich after. That's the 8.
So if that's the 8, and that's really intriguing because that just goes to show you how strong of a campaign Miles McBride has had as of late. That somebody like Thibodeau trusts him this much. Miles McBride getting significant, and we don't know just how often,
Yeah.
Tom is going to go to the bench because this could definitely be like a 45 minutes a game for the starters type of situation
Yeah.
for all we know. But if Miles McBride does get any kind of serious bump in the postseason, that's going to be really telling as to what the New York Knicks need to address in the offseason more than anything. I think that's going to, and no disrespect to Miles by any means, but that just goes to show you how low on the totem pole their shot creation from the guard position is, that Dante DiVincenzo is a dependent player. Josh Hart is a dependent player. OG Anunoby is a dependent player.
Hardenstein, their entire starting 5 now that's not Jalen Brunson is dependent on Jalen Brunson getting them the ball. That's how it is.
Yeah. So Miles McBride being the next up self shot creator at the guard position. Again, that's a low bar despite the fact that he's playing so well.
Hey, look, I know we're talking playoffs. I don't know how much the Heat value Tyler Hero anymore, but Knicks, you might want to look into that. You might want to look.
That's an offseason pod waiting to happen right there,
Yeah,
boy.
exactly. All right, let's move on to the next team, though. At the 4th seed, we got the Orlando Magic. And Jay, we're going to bring it back into the pod because my X factor for this team is Jonathan Isaac.
I knew it, bro. I literally knew this was coming.
Jonathan Isaac. Look, he's actually played a lot this year. We don't have to worry about injuries with Jonathan this year. He's played 55 games. He's actually played like a lot more than we expected, though. This team is an elite team defensively. We've known that. We've known that this entire year.
Yeah.
You're gonna have your two guys to rely on the offensive end, Paolo and Wagner. Everyone else, I'm looking throughout this entire roster. I was looking for like kind of like a Miles McBride light for this team, and I was like, Cole Anthony, maybe. I'm like, I don't know even like how much like he's like I don't know like what his ceiling is when it comes to the playoffs. But you know who's gonna be big for them because a lot of their defensive prowess comes from their guards. Jonathan Isaac is gonna be massive for this team, especially when you have to go against like potential matchups and the 76ers. I mean, like, do you trust Wendell Carter to guard Joel Embiid like the whole game? Probably not. You're gonna need to have like someone who's a bit lengthier, someone who specializes on that end. Jonathan Isaac could be that guy. When you face someone like the Miami Heat potentially, and you have someone to put on Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Isaac could be that guy. There's just so many like elite wings out there in the Eastern Conference, potentially the Celtics, potentially the Milwaukee Bucks, that the best shot you have against those guys is someone like a Jonathan Isaac. He's shown that he can show all defensive capabilities his entire career. He was, I think, like even like all defensive in his like first or second season, like in the NBA or something like that. So he definitely has the capabilities there, but he has to be healthy and he has to be on the court and not be a negative on the offensive end. That's the important thing. Can he stay on the court and not be a negative offensively? I think that's a possibility. I think that he's going to play a big role if the Magic want to get out the first round, which is maybe what they're trying to look at.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think Jonathan Isaac is actually going to be really important when you think about the different kind of matchups that Orlando could run into. If they play Cleveland, it's Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. If they play Indiana, they get Miles Turner. They're going to have to shut the water off on Pascal because you can't sleep on the fact that boy lives in transition and definitely lives at the rim, right? And, of course, you mentioned beforehand with Philly, if they play Joel Embiid, even with them coming in a little hobbled, you don't want to even remotely give Philly any type of breath when it comes to the idea of Joel Embiid being able to assert dominance. Because if Joel Embiid can get the ball rolling, we know Tyrese Maxey can go for 50, literally.
Yeah.
Like literally capable of doing so. So when you put those two things together, a guy like Jonathan Isaac being able to shut the water off on the inside is going to be important. And like you mentioned beforehand, the defense outside of that is pretty strapped. I mean, you think about what Jalen Suggs has brought to the table this year. Like, that's an all defense guy for
Yeah.
sure this year. I don't know if he's first team because now things are positionless. So who knows? It might end up being a lot of centers in this grouping. But he definitely, if he doesn't make the all defense team this year,
That's insane.
somebody didn't watch the games.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. The games weren't being watched this year. So he's been insane. And I think that you can trust him as a perimeter stopper. But if they don't have an internal guy who can deter from the rim, it doesn't matter who they play, whether it's Cleveland, Indiana, or Philly. Guess what they all three have in common? A guard who can push the ball to the basket. And I'm not going to say at will because that's not really Tyrese Halliburton's game per se as compared to. But I was going to say where it makes up for Tyrese is what he doesn't do individually. His overall, the way he runs the system for Indiana creates a lot of downhill opportunities for them for other players. And that happens in a completely different way where, again, not being able to shut off the rim is huge. TV, my question, though, is I know you were just talking about the lack of shot creation for New York. We're not worried about Orlando offensively.
Oh, I'm worried. I just don't really trust anyone. I mean, like Cole Anthony, yes, he's had his moments, especially early on in the season. I feel like we were talking about Cole Anthony quite a bit, like in the early parts. But I've like just been set on the fact that it's Banchero or Wagner, and that's basically their offense. I don't see like anyone really stepping up there. Where Miles McBride, he might have to be forced in that position, but at least he's been like performing like as of late. And I think like going into the playoffs, which is really important. For the Magic, I don't know where else it's gonna come from. But there's one thing that I know that they have as a secret weapon, as a defensive like Swiss Army knife, and that's Jonathan Isaac, and he can like play some meaningful minutes, especially due to his capabilities. I swear he's like one of the few people that can defend like maybe not ones but 2 to 5s throughout the entire league. And I think that's going to be important, especially if you're going to predicate most of your system on the defensive end. He's going to have to play a big part in it.
Yeah, I think it's really ironic. I was looking at some of the stuff in terms of like the lowest rated offenses going into the playoffs that made any kind of real headways in the postseason. And one of the worst offensive rated teams to win a championship, ironically, was the 2004 Pistons that were built off of a similar mindset of having two strong offensive players. At the time for them, it was Chauncey Billups running the one, and they had Tayshaun Prince, who was a self-shot creator at the time. And that was big for them because, they still had like Rip Hamilton and things of that nature. But these two guys in particular, in Chauncey and Tayshaun Prince, were the two guys who were the best at generating their own shot off the bounce. That's kind of what Franz and Paolo are in a very different facsimile because they're handling the ball as both being wing guys, big wings at that. But obviously, we know Detroit got through the postseason off the strength of their defense. I'm not saying that Orlando makes a run, but I agree with you. If Orlando were to try to really make a deep playoff run, it's going to be off the strength of their defense far and beyond anything offensively that's brought, because I think that they're going to get a couple of nights from Paolo Banchero in his postseason debut. I think they're going to get a couple of nights from Franz Wagner. But if defensively they're not up to snuff the way we've seen them throughout the regular season, this could be an Orlando Magic team that shows their youth really early.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like they're definitely one of the question marks, especially because they kind of like, I guess in a sense, the Thunder, like they're like the Thunder East, where they jump in not even as a play-in team last year, but like going straight into like potentially a top 4 seed in the East. So it's interesting, like to see like what their game plan is going forward. Because like we mentioned, besides Paolo and Franz, where else is it going to come from? So so someone like Jonathan Isaac to like really double down that defensive identity is going to be key. So he's someone to look out for. Next up, the Cleveland Cavaliers. My X factor is actually a pretty big day for them. I'm going to go Evan Mobley. I think that no one talks about Evan Mobley enough. Obviously, because of the injury that he's sustained this year, he's played very limited minutes compared to his other years. But there has been some doubts, especially now with Jared Allen like having the type of season he has, like a borderline all-star season, and the way Donovan Mitchell isn't playing. He's been kind of lost in the shuffle. And especially as of late, this two center lineup, basically, that they've been showing these past couple of seasons, has looked a little bit iffy, especially defensively. And that's kind of like what they were hoping Evan Mobley was going to like cover up for. But I think it's just this whole change from like system to system when you have Evan Mobley back into the lineup. Of course, you're not going to have as much shooting, and that's where the Cavs found most of their success this year. So having Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the lineup now, when a lot of your success early on in the year came from shooting, it's kind of a weird change. It's kind of a weird dynamic change for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But we know how talented Evan Mobley is as a player. He's an all defensive type player. He was like, I swear, he was in the top 3 defensive player of the year last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know how good he could be on that end, but can his offense keep him on the floor? And will teams finally see this like 2 big men lineup as a potential like weakness for the Cavaliers now because of like how much their offense can struggle with this type of lineup on the court this year? I don't know, but if Evan Mobley can provide, close to, I wouldn't say his career averages, he needs to really up like take it to the next level offensively to be, a key like member of the offensive unit for them. But I just think that he needs to produce more on the offensive end for him to like not be kind of like, I wouldn't say targeted again. He's just a defensive player of the year candidate, but for the Cavs to sacrifice 3-point shooting in order to keep him on the floor.
I think at the end of the day, you might be sacrificing offensive firepower in general with him on the floor. And that's a big concern in its own right when we've seen the success that they can have as a 3-point shooting team, as a squad that coming into the year, we thought they re-upped on 3-point shooting, right? They picked up Sarah Merrill. They picked up Max Strus, got Gorgie Jang. Like, we knew they understood.
You mean Georgie
Niang, sorry. To be able to get a stretch for, right, another Dean Wade, right, so to speak, to be able to add to the 3-point shooting, right? We understood that they realized their biggest hole offensively was their lack of 3-point shot creation, and they were able to address that in a real way when they were without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Now the question is, how do they integrate that in a offensive setting where now the game slows down? One of the biggest worries for me about Evan Mobley actually stems more so from last year than this year. TV, they got punched in the face last year.
By the Knicks, yeah.
I mean, literally punched in the face. And we got to remember, with the way the standings are set up right now, they can mess around and run into the Knicks again. Like, let's understand that. And if we go with the matchup as currently set, the Knicks were built off of defensive prowess last year. The Orlando Magic are no slouch either, by any means. And I think that that's huge because I think that Orlando actually has much better guard depth defensively than what New York had last year, personally. Or I would maybe not guard depth, but I would say at least guard talent, because I think Jalen Suggs, hands down, is the best defender between New York and Orlando as a perimeter defender of anybody within the group. So that's big time by itself. I think that Cleveland needs to be worried about Evan Mobley from the factor of, is he going to be able to step up against physical play? Because whether they run into the Knicks, whether they run into Orlando, whether somehow Milwaukee messes this up and they fall down a little bit and they mess around and run into Giannis and Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez in the first round, like, no matter what the setup is, unless somehow things switch around where they end up against Indiana, which I don't think is going to happen, but unless somehow that happens, every other team that Cleveland could face right now leans with physicality first. And that's what got them booted last year. So I worry about Evan Mobley from that perspective. I have a question for you, though. I heard this on a podcast, and I thought this was a really interesting question. And it's dope because you picked Evan Mobley as your X factor. Evan Mobley is Evan Mobley is up for a rookie contract extension this summer, right?
Yeah.
Cade Cunningham is as well on a booty butt cheeks Detroit Pistons team. And the question that came up was the idea of, who would you rather give the max to in terms of having to pay a max rookie extension contract to, if you had to, between Evan Mobley and Cade Cunningham based off their trajectory and where they are right now?
Well, I truly believe both are going to get it. But I would rather.
I do too, and I don't think that's great. But that's why I asked you a question, because I have a response afterwards.
The Cavs have no choice but to give it to him. They need to keep their third overall pick. They need to get their guy. I always say like to see this out like with this like whole core, even without Donovan Mitchell, he is still supposed to be like your 4 or 5 for the next decade.
Yeah.
So but Cade is also like a lot of the Pistons' future relies on his ability to grow and be like a top player in this league. Both are going to get it, but I think I would rather give it to Cade. Even though it's on a bad Detroit Pistons team, he is more franchise changing ability than Evan Mobley does. Maybe it's because he has the ball more. Of course, he has more scoring opportunities, but he has like that star to superstar level potential. I still see in him that Evan Mobley. Sure, he might make some All-Star teams, might make some All-Defensive teams, but he's not going to be a potential game breaker or someone who's going to turn a franchise around like Cade Cunningham can.
I mean, I agree with you, and you also have to factor in Cade Cunningham plays a prime position. He plays between point guard and the wing spot, and that's something that's not like you're just walking around in the NBA. You know what I mean? It's not something that you can just easily acquire on a regular basis. But that's why I take that and I say, yes, I agree with you that I think both of them will end up getting it because of the situation that Cleveland is in. But I think that if you have to reluctantly give Evan Mobley the max, that also means they're going to have to make some real decisions on whether or not Donovan Mitchell and or Darius Garland end up on this team going into next year with the kind of tax bill they're going to have. A lot of people point that Donovan Mitchell to being the one traded. Recent buzz has kind of added up to the idea of like, we've been trying to put Trae Young on the San Antonio Spurs, but what about San Antonio calling out Darius Garland, right? Like these are, but I know in a sense these don't seem like things that have anything to do with the postseason, but the way they perform in the playoffs this year is going to dictate a lot of these kind of decisions that come up. They're going to be really important. Evan Mobley being worth a max contract is going to have ripple effects on what they're able to do flexibility wise with their roster moving forward. And it might end up costing them a part of the big four in the process, depending on how these guys play. Now, they'll either be willing to kick the can down the road and deal with the high tax bill, or they might be forced to make a tough decision. Unfortunately, of all people, the player who's playing the worst for them of the core four actually has the most influence on how that whole thing could shape out.
Yeah, 100%. And you have to remember too, Jared Allen has like one of the best bargain contracts in the league.
Facts.
Like $20 million a year. So when his contract is up, and it's what, I think 2 years, maybe next offseason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a decision to be made because he's definitely worth more than $20 million a year. So be able to look up for that. But yeah, Evan Mobley, man, we've been talking about how you like haven't really grown since your rookie year. He's gonna have to show a bit more, especially come playoff time, if he wants to be like considered like in that rare era of like, you know, star to superstardom, which people expected right away, but he hasn't really been able to reach that due to injuries or whatnot. But yeah, Evan Mobley is gonna be my X factor here. Final one, Indiana Pacers. I swear they've been at number 6 for forever now, but they're still here. My X factor for them is gonna be Aaron Nesmith. Look, he's not Buddy Hield, but he is going to have to shoot a lot of threes this offseason, and he's like one of their better perimeter defender guys on a team that does not really play defense. But he's going to have to play a big role in terms of that as well. 42% from 3, 12 points per game. He's just like he's missed some games due to injury, but at the same time, now that Benedict Mathurin is injured, now that they lost Buddy Hield, and Doug McDermott hasn't been the kind of the replacement that they were looking for in terms of shooting the 3-point ball. It's gonna have to be Aaron Nesmith, the one who's gonna be hitting those wing threes. It's gonna be the one to guard the best guard, has to defend the best guard on the other team. It's a lot to ask for, especially because that probably wasn't his role early on in the season. But going into the playoffs, he's gonna have to play a bigger role than what they initially expected. And I think he has to perform big if the Pacers actually want to like have some sort of run in the playoffs.
I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing for Aaron Nesmith is that he is filling a role that he didn't know he was going to be stuck with, considering the fact that Buddy Hield was playing so well for Indiana before the trade. And now he has to step up in a way that is definitely not the most ideal, I think, for him just yet as a guy that's going to be entering his first postseason as a real factor. But I mean, he's been really good this year. Like he's been really good throughout the development of this season. And it's going to be important for him to be able to get this experience because I do think that he's going to become a really important player on the Indiana Pacers long term. So this is going to be good experience for him. I still do kind of look back at that Buddy Hield trade and just kind of wonder, like, what was the thought process, considering that the Pascal trade seemed like the perfect segue to building up this team for the postseason. Now you have what you would think is a secure top 6 spot in the East. Now, nothing is completely secure in the East right now, but if you make the postseason this year, I think this team is better off keeping Buddy Hield and facing a situation where maybe he walks away, but you get a good playoff experience with him on this roster rather than having him walk and wondering how much better of a team they could have been had he still been on the team. So Aaron Nesmith is going to answer a lot of those questions, because if he can fill that role in a way that Buddy Hield could have been here for, then I mean, maybe we still see the best of him.
Yeah, I mean, like he's averaging like what 4.5 threes per game. When it comes to the playoffs, and especially the way Indiana run things, that has to go up. That has to go up to like 7-8. And again, that wasn't his role. But this is, for them to be at their best, he's gonna have to put up that type of volume. Will he be able to hit it? If he can hit it at 40%, they'll take it. So hopefully, we can get that from the Indiana Pacers. They're the opposite of the Orlando Magic. This team heavily relies on their offense, and there's not much defense here. So, for someone to replace the Buddy Hield production, it's again a lot to ask. And he's actually a better defender than Buddy Hield. To be honest, he's gonna have to play a big role on both sides of the court for the Pacers.
Facts, I agree. Indiana's an interesting team because this postseason, this is gonna be the first time we see an up-tempo team in the postseason in a while where they play this kind of erratic up and down style, but they've got arguably one of the best point guards in the NBA right now in Tyrese Halliburton making his playoff debut as well. And I think we're in for a really interesting thought experiment on, okay, the playoffs is usually where the game slows down. But what if a guy who leads the league in pace in terms of the way this team runs, what if that guy shows up? Then how do things play out?
Let's see how it goes, man. If we know when the Brights are light, Tyrese Halliburton, at least in the play-in tournament, that he can show up.
Right.
Well, we'll have to see how that goes in the playoffs. But yeah, those are the East X factors. Let me know down below if there's anyone I was missing. If there's any other X factors, even non-player related, let me know down below what you guys think. Jay, throwing it over to you to the West. Starting off at the number 1 seed, man. It's been flip-flopping for quite a bit, but right now it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. Who do you have as their X factor?
Yeah, man, the Western Conference actually might be a little bit easier than the East in terms of X factors because these guys have been bloodbathing for a while now, but that means we know who those dudes are. For Minnesota, guess what? You already know the name. It's Karl Anthony Towns. He's coming back from injury, and TV.
Back this week, apparently. He's looking to come back this week.
And at TV, there's nothing better than knowing that Karl Anthony Towns is going to get time on the floor before the postseason starts. That's huge, especially when you factor in with them being a number 1 seed, that they're going to get a little bit of breathing room while they sit down and wait for their play-in tournament opponent. Here's the thing, though. We joned on him all last year after the way the postseason went, and I'm going to keep joning until he proves me otherwise. Karl Anthony Towns has to put together a strong playoff series. I need one strong playoff series from Karl Anthony Towns. That's it. Because as far as I'm concerned right now, Karl Anthony Towns is in the doghouse. And I don't just mean that because he's been out for significant time and the Minnesota Timberwolves have been able to survive without him. But we've brought it up, and I'm usually the one that keeps bringing it to the table. But their financial situation is going to force them to have to look at their roster and make tough decisions. Do we not remember that this Minnesota team, their owner and the people who were trying to purchase the team barely have been able to put up the money lately in terms of just being able to pay for this team? So I don't think them going into the second apron is going to be something they're looking forward to. And with a team stacked like this from financially and Anthony Edwards being who he is, they're not going to be able to afford this roster long term unless they have a reason to keep trying to find out how to fork up the money to keep this team together. And the guy who's going to be the easiest to point the finger to move off of is Karl Anthony Towns. He has to put together a strong postseason, bro. We haven't seen it yet, and it's a big factor in how Minnesota's going to be able to make any progress in the postseason. Otherwise, they're going to be another first-round exit, regardless of how scrappy they've been.
Man, Karl Anthony Towns, each one of his playoff series, he's performed below his averages in the regular season every single year. He has to show us something here. You may look at Rudy Gobert and say, how is he going to defend the playoffs? How is Karl-Anthony Towns going to be able to stay on the court? Because he's not going to give you the defensive impact Rudy's going to give you. And if he's not going to give you the offensive and on the offensive end, which we know he can, it's just when it comes to the playoffs, it hasn't been able to show in his 3 playoff series so far. Only averaging like 18 points a game and 10 rebounds in the playoffs on 47% shooting from the field, 30% shooting from 3. Not looking good, Cat. So yeah, definitely a good X factor, especially because you know what you have in Anthony Edwards. You know he's going to produce no matter what. We've garnered that expectation from him.
Mm-hmm.
Towns has to look at a formidable number 2 in this league, and this is the best chance to kind of prove all those haters wrong.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's where it comes from to me. I think that Karl-Anthony Towns has to have a strong postseason. It's no walking around it because I don't think they can afford to pay him what they have upcoming to pay him if they don't think that he's a guy that can perform next to Anthony Edwards in the playoffs.
Especially because Naz Reid is adding that 3-point shot.
I wasn't going to say nothing, TV, but our boy Naz Reid kind of making it a little easier to kind of decide on what they got to do. I'm just saying.
We love us some Naz Reid. I feel like everyone loves some Naz Reid around the NBA. Look, man, he's on a bargain contract right now. Probably going to demand less money than Cat. Just say it. Cat, you got to perform this playoffs. Yep. All right, Jay, moving on to the next team, we have the Denver Nuggets, the defending champs. Who do you got as their X factor?
It's the combination of KCP and Peyton Watson, actually. But the overarching theme is perimeter defense. This team, if they can guard on the outside, they're going to be Gucci because they already got the big man on the inside making all the decisions offensively. And we already know that gets busy whenever Nikola Jokic is on the floor. And he's been a bargain of health so far this year. Obviously, we know that the 1-2 game of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic is still one of, if not the best in basketball. And in the postseason setting, these guys shine under the bright lights. Defensively, though, these 2 guys in particular, KCP and Peyton Watson, their ability to guard on the outside is going to be important. Let's think about the different kinds of teams that Denver might have to go through to make another championship run. They got SGA and Jalen Williams for OKC, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard for the Clippers. Dallas has Luka and Kyrie, who have been playing their best ball as of late. New Orleans, that's a little bit different in terms of what's on the perimeter, especially because we're still a little iffy about Brandon Ingram at the moment. But Phoenix, you look at that one. If you take Bradley Beal out of it, you still have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Like when you go down the list, there are a lot of high-octane offenses in the Western Conference, and a lot of them lean on outside shooting and perimeter ball skill. Those 2 guys are going to play a pivotal role in that because of the fact that if this team can get in a shootout with you, but I think that they are going to have to be able to lock up with the defensive end in order to win this championship. Last year, they got a really good run based off the way the bracket landed. This year, I don't know if it's as favorable. I still would take them to run the table in the West, especially if they secure the number 1 seed and get home court advantage throughout the postseason, because we know they get busy at home. And ironically, I think they play Minnesota tonight as of us recording this at home.
And winner gets
winner basically, I'm not going to say they secure it because there's still a lot of weird tiebreaker things and stuff taking place. But if Denver wins it, it takes them one more step closer to them being the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference. And I think that's the last thing that either anybody in the play-in tournament or anybody in the West in general wants to see when they look up at the bracket when things finally shake down. So Denver, it's going to be huge for them to be able to get that strong perimeter play from them. And if they get home court advantage in the West, oh man, GG's in the chat, bro. You basically didn't reach your death. You didn't reach your obituary before you even got to the start.
Yeah, I mean, like, we know what the offense can give. By the way, in the playoffs, we've seen this from year in, year out. Jamal Murray turns it up when it comes to defense in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Like, he'll take on the best guard. So it's about the other guys. Yeah, I mean, we know Aaron Gordon, what he can give you. We know that KCP is a very good perimeter defender as well. If they're able to handle that and let Jokic just put up like 120 plus points a game, basically do it like facilitating the offense on his own, then y'all be fine. You will be fine in the playoffs because you've been able to do it again. I mean, the only team that's beaten them in like record at home is the Boston Celtics. That scares them. That's some scary stuff over there in Denver. So yeah, it's hard to poke holes in this team. We know how well this team could play. Looking back to last year, and it's looking more of the same this year. But the perimeter defense is going to be definitely something to look at, especially now that you don't have Bruce Brown. Remember, this is like that was the biggest thing that they lost this offseason was Bruce Brown being like the hard, kind of like I wouldn't say the heart and soul, but like a huge energy boost off that bench, in the defensive end. So it's definitely something to look at. But this Denver Nuggets team, it's still hard to poke holes in this team, even trying to like look at like X factors and everything.
Yeah, Denver is one of those teams that's kind of like when we were talking about Boston earlier, where it's like we just need to see postseason play from them at this point.
Yeah.
And it'll clarify a lot of the trepidations we may or may not have. But I think a lot of people have been leaning Denver's way for a while now as the team to beat in the West, and it's going to take them to stumble over their own feet for us to finally start worrying about them.
Yeah, 100%. All right, man. Moving on to the third team in the West. Again, part of that trio who's like currently just like battling it out for the first seed. The Oklahoma City Thunder. Who do you guys the X factor?
So the X factor for me is Josh Giddey. He's the only guy who I think when you look at their depth, he's the only guy who feels like he's still trying to find his footing. He's had a strong push these last couple of months. I think March was a really good stepping stone for him, particularly from the three ball spot, shooting 41% on near four 3-point attempts per game. That's huge for him as a player that's kind of always struggled from beyond the arc. Literally in February, he was under 30%. So he's taking the proper strides to be able to kind of get that uptick that he needs. And unfortunately, he is kind of falling back into earth so far these last couple of games, back down to about 20%. So it's one of those up and down roller coaster rides with Josh Giddey, specifically as an offensive creator, that just kind of makes you wonder where he lands in the pecking order for this Oklahoma City Thunder team. He definitely is a good prospect for them, and he definitely has a spot on this roster, but you just wonder, especially as a starter, whether or not he's really feasible next to SGA under these kind of circumstances. And I've seen good play from Isaiah Joe. I've seen strong play from Cason Wallace, right? So we understand that this team has depth at the guard position with good, high-octane players who play with good IQ. It's just going to come down to whether or not Josh Giddey can make sure that he's not too in the way and doing what's necessary to help this team win. Because he's a good player, man, but he's the odd, like in the starting five, he's the odd man out. Like, and it's weird because once upon a time, he was considered one of the main building blocks. Then Jalen Williams showed up, and then Chet Holmgren got healthy, and then boom, just like that, you went from maybe being the second guy in the pecking order to fourth, maybe fifth, and that depends on how people feel about Lucas Dort, because Lucas Dort might make it where maybe Josh Giddey's like the fifth guy in that grouping. And that's where things, you got to really wonder, because Josh Giddey's a dude that we speculated trade rumors for completely different reasons earlier on in the year. But for a team, I brought him up earlier when it came to Darius Garland, but again, for a team like San Antonio, for example, who needs point guard help, you wonder what the value of a Josh Giddey is, especially when you figure out that maybe he doesn't fit as well on this team as Oklahoma City Thunder fans might have hoped once upon a time.
Yeah, and you know what Lugan's like, what Dort added to his game to make him like more feasible in this lineup? A three ball. That's the biggest thing here, because look, Josh Giddey can play a good role on this team if he has the ball more, but you're not taking the ball out of the hands of SGA or Jalen Williams or, as a matter of fact, Chet Holmgren. You don't want the ball. And what is Josh Giddey going to give you if he's not like handling the ball? Not much. He's a 34% 3-point shooter this year. Like you mentioned, he had a few, like, I would say maybe a good 2-week stretch in March where he was actually hitting some shots from three. But over the past like 5 games, he's like 2 for 12, like 2 for 13 again. So he's coming back down to earth. Like, it's not looking great for Josh Giddey in terms of like how is he gonna be able to finish games with this with the Oklahoma City Thunder, especially when you look down the depth chart. Cason Wallace has been hitting threes at a pretty good rate this year. You have Isaiah Joe, one of the more underrated 3-point shooters in the league. So they could provide even more value to this Oklahoma City team in the playoffs, not because they're better players per se than Josh Giddey, but they just provide what the Thunder need right now. So, yes, Josh Giddey's a good player, but can he be able to stay on the court with this roster, especially come playoff time? That's something to look out for.
Yeah, Josh is one of those guys that I think a strong postseason from him could change the narrative around what he's going through and how he fits on this team. by a landslide. He's not in Karl Anthony Towns territory because Karl Anthony Towns has the payment price next to him, the price tag, so to speak, that kind of sways your viewpoint on him. But Josh Giddey having a strong postseason could really kind of give us a better understanding of what his fit on this team is in settings like these, where maybe he's just not a good regular season player over the course of 82 games when you have a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on ball, or a guy developing like a Jalen Williams who's slowly becoming one of the better two-way players in the NBA at the wing spot. Maybe he's just not necessarily fit for an 82-game schedule. Maybe he's a guy who is able to step up and utilize his playmaking in a very specific setting like the postseason, where when the game slows down, he's able to make certain things happen. And that's going to be one of those things that really matters, because if the opposite is true and he can't operate off ball, and he can't work within an offense that plays around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren in a postseason setting, then you start having to wonder, okay, then who does take that spot? Because I thought it was really telling at the trade deadline that Oklahoma City went after Gordon Hayward. I thought that was a really telling move, because despite the fact that Gordon Hayward has not worked out for them at all since acquiring him, the skill set they were getting from Gordon Hayward in theory was the kind of skill set that you think in the postseason would bump Josh Giddey out of the starting lineup, to me.
And no, I definitely see that. I feel like, I mentioned like Isaiah Joe and Casey Wallace. Gordon Hayward might have a more valuable skill set. I'm not saying he's a more valuable player, a more valuable skill set to this Oklahoma City team, especially come playoff time, than Josh Giddey. Yeah. Can he change that narrative? I'm not sure, but we're gonna have to. That's definitely something to look at come this first round series, because it's gonna be a good test for the Oklahoma City Thunder. All right, the number 4 team in the West, Jay, the LA Clippers. Who do you guys the X factor?
Oh, brother. It's James Harden. It's not even close. I got to be real with you, dude. If James Harden isn't clicking, I don't know what's up with this team. I love what Kawhi Leonard has been able to do this year. All-NBA caliber player. Paul George, same thing. Paul George might just barely miss All-NBA or just barely crack All-NBA third team with the way he's been playing this year. We know what those guys are capable of. Yeah, he's definitely on the cusp. We know what those two guys are capable of. Russell Westbrook made it clear recently. He said there's no guy coming off the bench better than me right now this season. And I agree with him. He has had a real significant impact on this team in terms of the kind of intensity on both offense and to an extent on defense when he's been in the lineup. And we've seen this team fold this year when Russell Westbrook isn't in the lineup, and we've seen them fire on all cylinders when he does play. Let's also fill in the caveat that Russell Westbrook playing means that there's less Bones Highlands minutes. And I love Bones Highland, but let's be real. Russell Westbrook, definitely a better player than Bones Highland at the moment, and definitely a better fit for postseason basketball. But James Harden, this time of year is why you trade for James Harden. Let's take all of the stuff from the rest of this year out of it, where he went 15 plus games without scoring 20 or more points over the course of almost an entire month. Let's take out the fact that the time when they initially acquired him, the team was cheeks for like 8 games straight before kind of putting together a very strong campaign before the All-Star break, only to kind of flip it on its heels and kind of be middle of the pack since the All-Star break. Let's take all of the ebbs and flows of the James Harden acquisition out and just focus on this time ahead of us. The postseason is why you acquire James Harden. That's why he's the X factor, because this is the reason why this time of year is why you trade for him. Whether or not he shows up essentially puts a grade on whether or not you won the trade or not.
What's funny is he already has a rocky playoff history. Even before this, like even just look at the last year with the Philadelphia 76ers. Remember when he had that like 40+ point game to start off the series? Kind of went cold for a bit, had another one, and then kind of cooled off a bit. Like he's just like, speaking of ebbs and flows, this man is a freaking roller coaster when it comes to the playoffs. So is he gonna be that guy? Not even looking at his like playoff performances, but even just injuries in general. I like if we can get 20-10 James Harden, if we can get Brooklyn Nets James Harden, that's the ideal thing that the LA Clippers want to see, because we know what we're gonna get from Paul George, we know what we're gonna get from Kawhi Leonard. James Harden is the third guy, and if he's not playing like that, and you can see like some more meaningful minutes coming from even someone like Russell Westbrook, that is cause for concern because you're not gonna be able to run through the West with that sort of game plan. James Harden needs to be the number 3 guy. It's weird saying James Harden number 3 guy right now, but that's what he needs to be. Not just scoring the basketball, but also facilitating. He has the ability to do it, but can he stay healthy? Will he be able to perform on a night-to-night basis? It's still a huge question mark. So that's why I think it's a great thing to have him as the X factor here.
Yeah, I worry about James for the very point that you made. We know your history, and under these circumstances where you aren't the guy at the same time, that means that every role that you play on a series to series basis becomes much more important because now you're filling a hole that this team has.
They've been needing a point guard for years. They finally got it. And we're now even having questions about this point guard. This is not looking. This is going to be very interesting to see how this Clippers team is going to wind up in the playoffs because some may have him as high as like NBA Finals one. Let's be completely honest. Like at their peak, they can't do that. Can they even? Is there a chance they even might get eliminated first round? There's definitely a possibility that could happen too. So it's definitely gonna be something interesting to see for the LA Clippers. Next up, the team who has been on an absolute roll recently and like really like especially helping out Luka Doncic's MVP case. This team might even get to 50 wins, and that becomes a real possibility. But the Dallas Mavericks, who do you have as their X factor?
So the X factor for me, unfortunately, is less of a player and more of a rotation, and it's the bigs. We need the bigs to kick it. Look, we're looking at the potential. It seems basically set in stone. Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks versus LA Clippers Part 3.
Woo! It's really up to see.
Man, but here's the thing. We learned this on both occasions. One of the things that the Clippers were able to thrive on was 5-man small ball lineups and their ability to drive, slash, and just cause overall damage off the bounce and off cut to the basket. It made them dangerous. This was a team that even with the 5 out, they weren't necessarily shooting the 3 ball insane in terms of volume. They were doing 5 out to be able to put the ball on the floor and create more slashing opportunities. That's why in one of those series against Dallas, Terrence Mann was huge. I don't know if it was the last time or the first time they had matched up, but Terrence Mann had himself a huge series against the Dallas Mavericks as a slasher on the wing. And it was one of the breakout parties for him because he was able to show up in a series where many people definitely wouldn't have factored him in as a real like threat as a two-way player. He obviously had shown signs throughout the year, but his ability to slash, get to the basket and things of that nature, it was huge. But here's the thing. Now, the Clippers have Russell Westbrook, one of the best slashers in NBA history. Obviously, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard being healthy is going to be an important factor. They're still going to probably lean on 5-out basketball when you think about the fact that they have James Harden as well. So what do you do to combat that? If you can't necessarily guard on the perimeter, which I do not have any trust that this Dallas Mavericks team can guard on the outside, if we're talking Doncic, Kyrie Irving, I like Derrick Jones. I like him. But
Dante Exum is going to get his minutes there, bro.
Yeah, man. Shout out Derrick Jones Jr., former Bull. Love Dante Exum. He's shooting the 3 ball a lot better this year, despite the fact on low volume. And by the way, this team has been really good when Dante Exum has been healthy. Can't sleep on that either. But let's look at the perimeter guys that are going to be out there trying to guard. Tim Hardaway Jr., food. Dante Exum, probably their best perimeter defender outside of Josh Green, probably. So those are the only 2 guys.
Still not saying much, though.
I was going to say, and it's not saying much specifically because you can only start one of them.
Exactly.
You can only start one of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that comes down to shutting the water off at the rim. If you're going to go off again, we're talking strictly about just being able to get past the first round because we know this LA Clippers versus Dallas Mavericks series can go to 7. So in this situation, we're talking more so about just getting out of the first round with a team like Dallas. And for them, they got to be able to shut the water off at the rim. They've been one of the best rim defending teams since the trade deadline due to the play of Daniel Gafford more so. But PJ Washington is going to be important in this factor too. And I would not be surprised if Derek Lively gets big minutes. I would not be surprised. This
is what this offseason, this trade deadline was leading up to. Less minutes for Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber. This is what Dallas fans have been waiting for years. They probably have a whole new rotation. Now can they deliver? Is it a lot to ask for Derek Lively, a rookie? Yes. So I'm assuming that P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford's going to get the majority of the minutes. But that is still a massive upgrade than what they had. They have someone to match with Ivica Zubac now, which is already like for Dwight Powell. Sorry, but you're like a 11th, 12th man on the roster now. But this is what the Dallas Mavericks are preparing for. They're preparing for these type of situations. Now it's just all about deliverance because right now the Dallas Mavericks have been cooking.
Yeah.
They've been like showing that they're one of the best teams in the league, and low key, a dark horse finals contender. A dark horse. They're getting there, man. They're definitely getting there. And if Luka Doncic is playing at a freaking Super Saiyan mode as he has been all season long, it's gonna be freaking insane the lengths that he could take them. They finally have the offensive capabilities. They finally have the center rotation that can help them not only defend at the rim but also can be like reliable lob threats in these situations. The Mavericks team is ready, but it's all about, like you mentioned, this big rotation performing. They've been trying to mess with this entire year, and they finally found they had the recipe. Can it translate from regular season to playoffs? We'll have to wait and see.
This is the biggest difference in Dallas that we've seen since Luka Doncic is them having real rim defense, real rim runners, real shot blockers. Like this is something you mentioned with Maxi Kleber, more specifically being one of the guys that was getting a lot of the pounding during these series.
This guy was getting like 33 minutes a game in this previous playoff series.
And was basically spinning it, getting dunked on and ones like pretty much the entire time.
Bro, we've been trying to convince ourselves like, maybe Maxi Kleber is one of the most underrated big man defenders in the league. No, he's just the only one they had there in Dallas.
Pretty much. That pretty much sums it up. And like, you know, Powell was also a guy that maybe because of his athleticism at the forward spot. Again, it just seemed like nothing was working. This is probably the most formidable big man rotation that Dallas has had since they've drafted Luka Doncic. That gives them a different kind of chance because you have to remember, like I said, when we look at it, Luka Doncic has faced this team 2 times in the past, and he's seen both sides of the coin and what terms can go really good and in terms of what can go really bad. I think you can make an argument that this might be his best team against these circumstances because you have to remember Jalen Brunson wasn't even close to this Jalen Brunson when they faced off against them last time, despite the fact that he was really solid. And let's not forget, there was once upon a time that they had Kristaps Porzingis in this series, and he was getting picked on, and he was being relegated to being a spot-up three-point shooter in the corner. So this is a completely different looking Mavericks team, and I think that the new look version of them actually might suit them really well. And like I said beforehand, for Dallas, this is about getting past the first round because I agree with you. They could be a dark horse team to make a real run in the postseason, but the Clippers might be their biggest kryptonite from a construction standpoint, and we've seen proof of it that could still be something that plays against them if they're not able to shut off the rim.
We rarely have rivalries in the NBA anymore, man. This feels like one of the true ones still remaining. So excited to see how this is going to turn out. And Dallas has bring on the backup. They've brought in the enforcers there in the big man position. So it's going to be interesting to look into that rotation. Final team in the West, though, Jay. Again, this 60 has been flopping around everywhere, but at this current moment, it's the New Orleans Pelicans. Who do you got as their X factor?
Well, TV, this one's an obvious one. There's a certain guy who averages 0 minutes, 0 points, 0 rebounds, and 0% from the field goal percentage in the postseason because he's never played in it. And it's Zion Williamson. Yeah. It's one of those things where when you don't have any kind of sample size for a guy who's supposed to be considered one of your lead all-stars for the team, you need to know what the heck you're dealing with. And this is going to be our first time being able to see, hopefully, because again, them being at the 6th spot right now and being only a game ahead of Phoenix puts them in a weird predicament. Them beating Phoenix pretty good the other day was a pretty important game for them. So that's something that kind of equalizes things a bit. But if the New Orleans Pelicans are in this spot where they're able to secure a top 6 seed or just make the postseason in general with Zion Williamson healthy, that's a different wrinkle that we haven't been able to see. And this dates back to when, ironically, New Orleans played against Phoenix in that opening series. We just kept saying to ourselves, well, dang, that series went to 6 and Zion wasn't even playing. What does this look like for them in a series where they might be able to play with Zion? And let's talk about it. The Oklahoma City Thunder would be their first round matchup if the playoffs were set as of today. The Oklahoma City Thunder are also one of the more struggling rebounding teams this year. And
they're facing against Zion and Jonas Valanciunas, who can eat up boards like no tomorrow.
There you go, TV. That's the angle that it is. You talk
Yeah.
about the fact that you look at the dichotomy between a guy like Chet Holmgren versus Zion Williamson. You look at the dichotomy between a guy like Chet Holmgren and a Giannis Valanciunas. I don't think you necessarily play through a guy like Valanciunas, but does Valanciunas
He gets
sneakily get more touches during a series versus
so
Oklahoma City?
you
Who
don't
knows?
people have to remember this guy gets like random like crazy playoff games like every once in a while where he goes to like 30 and like 15. Like he has that potential. I mean, they're not gonna do that consistently, but he
Yeah.
has that potential, especially if they want to like really make Chet Holmgren work in the series and like take him away from being like a rim deterrent. Just go at him. Just test it out. You know, it never doesn't hurt.
And I think you have to, because it's not just from Chet Holmgren's frame or anything like that. He's one of the top players in terms of rim contest and shot contesting in general. The dude's gonna get the dirty work done. But as a rookie, particularly in this setting, you want to test his fervor. And if you're able to get a guy like Zion Williamson, who his entire game is predicated around getting to the basket. Jonas Valanciunas as a post-up player with his physicality at a large, 240, 250 pound post presence guy. These are the kind of things that if you're talking about matchups, for example, like this one, New Orleans is in an interesting spot because, again, you're going up against one of the lower end rebounding teams in the NBA. And you as New Orleans have two guys that basically live in the paint, both offensively and well, not necessarily defensively for Zion Williamson, but definitely offensively for both him and Valanciunas, as you mentioned beforehand. But I just want to see Zion play in the postseason. Now, again, nothing is guaranteed with the Western Conference as currently set up, especially for New Orleans. But if they're able to crank this one out and be able to land a top spot and amongst the top six, which it seems like they still have a chance to do, they have a pretty interesting matchup in round one, and Zion Williamson might be able to have a strong playoff debut, but it's going to be up to him.
100%. I mean, this unlucky for them is that they don't have the tiebreaker with the Suns. The Suns, if they ended up tying the record, they do have the tiebreaker. Yeah. But in terms of a first round matchup, the Thunder might not want to see this team again. Chet Holmgren's a fantastic defender. It's just like they're gonna freaking tire him the heck out, and then that thing there. If you have to, I have to have Jonas Valanciunas like leaning on me for freaking like 25 minutes tonight, and then if I have a switch, I have to go on to Zion. That's gonna be tough for Chet, bro. That's good. Tough.
I don't wish that on anybody, dog. Bro, I really do. For 7 games, I don't wish that on anybody. And that's your NBA playoff debut is just two of the more burly offensive players. Physical is probably like a better, like Burley is just from like in terms of their physical frame, but their play style being physical, it just makes it where like that's like the last kind of welcome to the NBA playoffs moment I think Chet Holmgren needs right now, man. I think he definitely wants the Phoenix Suns where it's a little bit more finesse prowess versus, physicality, where maybe they can just get into a track meet against those guys.
100%. Look, man. If Chet Holmgren gets in foul trouble and you have to throw Jalen Williams in there, it's gonna be baby food down there, bro. It's gonna be baby food. So yeah, that's definitely interesting. That's definitely like something to look at. Zion, I'm just excited to see Zion in the playoffs, man. Hopefully it does happen, but I'm excited to see him in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the 6 teams on each side. Let us know down below what you guys think. Any X factors that we're missing. Even for the other teams that you think like might make it to top 6, let us know if you have any X factors for those teams as well. But Jay, we have reached the ending segments of the pod, and of course we got to start with the NBA draft, and we're gonna continue on with this series as we enter the 2010 NBA draft. Jay, we had the 2009 draft. We know we had some heavy hitters on that one. When you look at this draft pool over here, how do you feel about these guys on the list?
I'm super nervous because we're back to only being able to really pick out of the first round confidently. This is not one of those where I see any like second round gems that are like standing out to me. So I'm going to have to really kind of put my hard hat on with this one and just pray that depending on how you decide to make your first initial picks after I get, pick number 1, that I can just kind of fill in the blanks talent wise. But this class right here, not super deep on talent.
Not super deep, but They have some, like, just looking at it, they have some, a couple Hall of Famers maybe in the mix here. If you want to put it that way. maybe just one. I'm just looking at it again. I'm just looking at maybe one Hall of Famer, but a lot of like multi-time All-Stars. There's still like some like pretty damn good players here. So yeah, definitely a good, interesting draft to draft out of. You know how these drafts go. Jay has the first pick. I get the next two, and we run things serpentine style. But Jay, you get the first overall pick here. Who do you got?
Oh man. And we get these guys at the peak of our power, so it's kind of like one of those things where you can definitely lose out. But I'm still gonna go PG. I'm still gonna go Paul George.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. No, he's the Hall of Famer. Let's be honest. If anyone's making the Hall of Fame in this draft class, is going to be Paul George.
Yeah.
He's that guy. That is a very, very valid first pick there. But I get the next two.
Yeah.
I know we're going to struggle going forward after this. So I want to take two guys, and especially if we're talking peak of their powers. I'm going to take two guys who were probably top two in their position at some point, like in their prime, and that's going to be John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be John Wall. It's got to be those two, man. We know what prime John Wall looks like, 20 and 11 type of guy, and like the freaking fastest player in the league, one of the most athletic guards, and then DeMarcus Cousins, 25 and 12, easy every night. Sadly, I really wish we got to see like that like Boogie and 80 combo in the playoffs, man. I really wish we could have.
Yeah, that seemed like the obvious combo, especially because there's already a synergy between these two guys coming from the same college at the same time, understanding that they were going to both be top 10 picks. So it kind of seemed like it was written on the wall. That's why I was a little hesitant to take PG, because I knew the two-man game was already basically set up. But you can make an argument that at peak of their powers, DeMarcus Cousins may have been the best player out of this draft class. Now, PG finished top 3 in MVP. DeMarcus Cousins never got to that point, but from a sheer talent perspective,
I don't hate that. I really don't.
It's at least an argument. At least an argument. The next two guys that I'm gonna go with are let me get Gordon Hayward, which thank God it's not this version of Gordon Hayward. It's the version that I can rely on, which is Utah Jazz version. Sure. And let me get one of the most notable perimeter defenders in NBA history, gets a lot of pub lately now that he's retired. Let me get Avery Bradley.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, no, Avery Bradley, he was definitely, to be honest, he's going to be my next pick. But yeah, I like that pick. Gordon Hayward and Avery Bradley, those are some two good ones over there. Interesting to see where you're going to go for that center and point guard position, though, for sure. You maybe put Avery Bradley at the one. Who knows how this goes? But yeah, I like those two picks for sure. My next two, though, it's tough because you also want a little bit of shooting here. And looking at this roster, it's not really like a great mix. This is tough, man. Like going into like this like later parts of the draft, Avery Bradley would have been the perfect guy for me. You know what? I am gonna go with changing to see if there's anyone else I am missing. Peak of their powers. I'm gonna go with. This is tough, yo. When you get to this point, it's like, we got the
not the greatest pool.
Okay, you know what? Prime wise, I'm gonna take a 4 here. Give me Greg Monroe. Greg Monroe. Borderline 2010 guy back in his day with Detroit. Before they added Andre Drummond, he was actually like a pretty damn good, reliable post player back in the day. The question is, am I gonna get shooting anywhere? Or do I just like bank on the fact I'm just gonna freaking like just drive at the paint like consistently? Because there's another guy here who I think would not be bad next to John Wall, but the shooting's gonna be tough. And I'm gonna run with it. Give me Eric Bledsoe.
Damn.
One of the better. By the way, one of the better defensive guards back in the day too. People like to call it Eric Bledsoe, especially like near the end of his time with the Milwaukee Bucks and that series with the Boston Celtics. But back in the day, early Bucks Bledsoe, he was all defensive team, and then like late Suns Bledsoe was damn good before he asked to be traded when he was in a hair salon.
Yeah, that was definitely the guy I was gonna go with next because of the fact that like I was just gonna build that defensive backcourt, but now you have a guy who fits relatively well next to John Wall. Like you said, the shooting is a little iffy, but you
I have
know.
a game plan. I have a game plan, and that's freaking attack the rim at will.
So I don't know if I can hang with the physicality of the front court that you have, but I'm gonna go with probably the best defensive player of the draft in terms of peak of their powers. Hassan Whiteside finished top 5 in DPOY twice.
Yo, just get contract. Yo, contract year Hassan Whiteside was a demon.
Come on,
What
bro.
big contract.
Snapchat demon. Come on, man. Snapchat demon, aka blocks your mama. He was acting a fool. And then the other guy, I'm gonna just take another second round steal too, and I'm gonna put Avery Bradley at the 1, like we talked about beforehand, and let's put PG at the 4, Gordon at the 3. Man, this team's gonna be small, but we're gonna do what we gotta do. And I'm going to actually unite the teammates. Let me get second round steal. Let me get Lance Stevenson and put him at the 2.
I had a feeling we were gonna go there. That's a good pickup there at the end. Yeah, well, Lance Stevenson. I mean, had a little bit of a three ball there. It depends. I mean, obviously you want Pacers, Indiana. Sorry, Lance Stevenson, but he's had his moments on other teams too. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. He's had his moments, but yeah, good pick there. Good pick there with Lance. And I think that was the last pick of your draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I have one more left, and man, this we got bare bones here, bro.
Yeah, you stuck now, brother. I don't know. You might have to pick somebody you're going to have to figure out how to pronounce.
Bro, if I want to go, if I want to go shooting, do I want to go with Luke Babbitt? Do I want to go
Triple big for the win with a Cole Aldrich, maybe?
Patrick
Ooh.
Patterson, Raptor legend Patrick Patterson? Patrick Patterson, you might still be on the list, bro. Let's see if I can find someone else. You know what? We're good. We're gonna get a really good wing defender here, and this guy has just been a solid role player his entire career, and we're gonna bring him over. Let's go with Alfred Aminu.
That's a good one. At the end of the day, you know he can defend. At least I would say Grievous Vasquez would have also been a cool little snipe. He would have been an interesting one.
Bro, there's so many just former Raptor role players here. It's insane. Greg Monroe. You have Gravis Vasquez,
Ed Davis.
Ed Davis.
Yeah.
And I got none of them because I didn't want any of these guys near this team.
Ooh, man. It's not great after this. I mean, Kevin Seraphin, I remember him as part of the we drafted him being the Chicago Bulls, but I remember him more so as a Washington Wizard.
For sure.
Wesley Johnson could have been way better than like from a projection standpoint coming out of Syracuse. Like he could have been, oh man, he could have been different, dude. But I mean, hey, it played. We didn't take Evan Turner. He would have been an interesting one. Game just didn't translate long term.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at 3-point percentage right now out of this whole thing, and I had a chance to take Luke Babbitt, but who would take Luke Babbitt? I don't know. But yeah, it was just a tough draft, especially near the end. There's some good top end talent, but once you start getting down to like 8 to 10, it was definitely tough. But yeah. Jay, the 2010 draft class, who is the team that you're able to draft from this group of players?
All right, man, we're playing the LA Clippers way. Small ball with a big center, boy. Here we go. Yeah. For this draft class, so for my official 2010 NBA draft starting 5, I'm going with Avery Bradley at the 1, Lance Stevenson at the 2, Gordon Hayward at the 3, Paul George at the 4, and Hassan Whiteside at the 5.
I like it. Honestly, this works for a lot to current day basketball. I'm cool with this. My team, on the other hand, the 90s crowd are going to love this one, bro, because we are going to be pounding the rock on the inside. The post play is going to be insane, especially with this front court. But here we go. At the 1, we got John Wall. At the 2, Eric Bledsoe. At the 3, Al-Farouq Aminu. And then, bro, good luck defending the post here with Greg Monroe and DeMarcus Cousins at the front court.
Hey, at least DeMarcus can shoot because it's going to be packed in there, boy. It's a lot of 3-second violations sounding like it's going to happen with your team. But I think at the end of the day, like you said, in the post, good luck. Hassan Whiteside, I love you as a defender, but he can't do it by himself.
Yeah. And you're not going to be dealing with Boogie one-on-one. Prime Boogie especially, nah. But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think. Which team, who of us had a better draft, myself or Jay? on this 2010 draft. We're gonna continue on next week with the 2011 ones. Be on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
All right, Jay. We're gonna be moving on to the final segment of the show, and it is time for the NBA quiz. And I think this one is pretty has to do with like pretty recent news because we didn't talk about this on the pod. We didn't even talk about this on TikTok. Rajon Rondo retired recently after a pretty substantial NBA career, multiple-time All-Star. Quick question: Hall of Famer Rajon Rondo?
I think so. I went through the stats. He got to be in there, dude.
I think so too. I think so. Maybe not first ballot. Maybe after a couple of tries, but I think he'll get there.
Did you see some of the other guys who made Hall of Fame this year's class? I think Rajon Rondo might have a better case than half the dudes that even made it in this group.
I mean, like, I think he's on. I'll say he's on par with Chauncey, but besides that, Vince Carter's the only one that's like easily like can go in above Rondo. But besides that, yeah, it's kind of like
those two and Jerry West. But I think outside of that, I think the other two players were like
Michael Cooper,
yeah, Lakers legacy stuff, like stuff where it's just like, come on, brother, come on.
Yeah, fair. No, that's fair. But yeah, Rajon Rondo, congrats on your retirement. He'll end up in the Hall of Fame one day. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
But Jay, this is kind of a spin on a different one we did because we've done quizzes where you have to try and guess how many games like they're most like played with teammates with some of the players. You know, like go to LeBron James and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But now, Jay, I'm gonna need you to name me the top 10 players that Rajon Rondo assisted the most. That he assisted the most. You know teams he's played for. You know one team is definitely more standout than the others. But let's see if you can name the top 10.
That's so tough because Rajon has been on some mother freaking teams, boy.
But look, not for long though. I will say that. Not for long on these other teams. You got to look at like the ones where he spent like significant time at.
True. Let's think. Can we name the teams he's been on, or is that cheating?
I mean, honestly, you don't have to go deep in the bag with this. You have to just look at like the two. I'll tell you, it's two main teams that dominate this list. The two main teams that he's known for.
So let's think. Ray Allen,
number 2 at 1,101 assists. Ray Allen got from Rondo.
So Kevin Garnett,
number 1, 1,072 assists he received from Rajon Rondo.
Paul Pierce,
number 3, 891 assists that Rajon Rondo gave to him.
Makes sense. Anthony Davis,
number 4, 318 assists.
Trying to go down this list real quick. Nasty work. It probably doesn't make the list, but is Jimmy Butler on the list?
No, Jimmy Butler is on the list.
I didn't think so. Any of that bull stint should not be on there, personally. I'm trying to think of the other. What about DeMarcus Cousins?
Number 5 on the list, 297 assists.
That team was crazy. Oh my gosh. Is LeBron on the list?
LeBron is not on the list, no.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like Rajon Rondo teams because I know he played for Dallas for a while for like a hot little second.
You don't have to go that deep into the bag with the teams, bro.
It's not that bad?
It's not that bad.
Dang, he played with Boston so long that I'm just like, I'm not sure.
You just gotta stick with that mentality, man. Stick with that mentality.
Who the hell played for Boston that I'm just like, yeah, he totally got some assists from him. Good God. Is Kendrick Perkins on the list?
Bro, you're going in order right now. Number 6.
Ew, nasty work, my boy. Nasty work. Kendrick Perkins being on this list is crazy.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. What else? Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of anybody else that was on those teams.
Honestly, 3 of these guys are very memorable for that franchise. One of them, he played a long time there. It's just you just forget him as a player. But the other guys are like synonymous, kind of with that Celtics era. You know what I mean? Like with that like Rajon Rondo era of the Celtics.
So he's like lower on the totem pole, but like you just like you remember, but like you know he was like on the team.
Yes, kind of like that.
Interesting. Who else were some players that were on that team though? I could just name obscure ones, but that's like Big Baby Davis.
Number 8, 199.
You're not serious. Oh my God.
So serious, bro. 199 to Big Baby, bro.
What the hell? Okay, so good
Got
God,
three more. You're missing number 7, number 9, and number 10.
I was just start naming random stuff. Like, go Von Wafer. Like,
No.
Jesus
We ain't
Christ.
going
Like,
that deeper.
what's going on here?
Yeah.
Um, this is like a lame one, but like, did Nate Robinson play with them long enough?
Nate Robinson, I don't think is on the list.
I don't know if
No.
Nate played with them long enough
He,
for him to be
he,
up there.
17 assists. He gave to that Rajon gave him. Just
Yeah. Oh, we talked about it. Is Avery on the list? Avery
Avery
Bradley?
Bradley, number 9, 161.
Cool. That was a solid backcourt at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm,
Clamps, by the way, too. They were clamps back in the day.
yeah, they were. Yeah, that was a dope backcourt. Oh my gosh. 2K10 could never recreate the kind of backcourt 2K10 could never recreate the kind of backcourt they had in real life, man. They were
Yeah,
on demon time, man. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
You're missing 2 more players, probably associated with the Celtics, like in the 2010 to like 2013 era.
Really? Okay. Who's in that group that I'm missing? I
One
feel
of
like
these
I
guys,
named all the big guys though.
there's one big guy that you're missing. Again, he played for the Celtics for a while. And you just forget that he was on the team, but he like played he played like starter minutes. Like he's like one of those weird Celtic bigs, like from that time, like post KG.
Oh, he was a Celtic big? Okay, damn, because I was about to say Jeff Green.
Number 10, Jeff Green.
No way. Uncle Jeff just collecting. Just collecting.
Collecting. Number 10 at 160. So you're just
Mm.
missing. I knew this guy was going to be the hardest. I knew this guy, but again, played with the Celtics for a while. I think was drafted by the Magic. He had a killer mid-range game. If anything, the one thing I remember this guy is he had a killer mid-range.
What? Okay, wait. Give me the hint again. Wait a minute. That's okay. That's interesting. You said killer mid-range game and okay, wait a minute.
This guy made the pick and pop work by just fading to the mid-range. You know how pick and pops work where you have someone like Brook Lopez like fading to the three-point line? This guy was doing pick and fades, but fading to the elbow and just hitting constant jumpers on y'all.
Dang. Drafted by the Magic is wait a minute.
I know that face. When you come to these quizzes, I know when you make that face like something like a player just.
Yeah, bro, because I'm trying to think. Because you know me, I gotta get locked in for these.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's super obscure though, so it's kind of I don't know if it's stupid.
Might as well throw it out there. You never know.
The Draymond lookalike, Brandon Bass.
Number 7.
Oh my god, that's crazy. Oh man, that's nuts. Okay.
200. The fact that this man received 245 assists from Rajon Ross.
Brother.
I was like, oh yeah, he did play there. I didn't realize that my man was getting it like that.
Dude, Brandon Bass in mid-range was Kenneth Faried at the rim in 2010, gang. Like they were the same person in terms of just being automatic for no reason at all.
My bad. He got drafted by the Hornets, but he was, I think, like the.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I feel like he did play for the Magic though. No,
Oh, no, he did. No, he played like 2. Because he was on their champions. He was on their finals team.
That's yeah, I was gonna say. When you said Orlando, I recognize it from that. I was just trying to think of people who played for Orlando that ended up also playing for the Celtics. So
yeah,
but drafted, played for him, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Brandon Bass, bro. This guy played 4 seasons with the Celtics. Like this guy was a midi monster. This guy. That's all. I mean, that's all I can remember him for. But he made a career out of doing that. By the way, I was just looking at his freaking basketball reference page. They had him. Apparently in 2008 with the Dallas Mavericks, he was voted as he came 21st place and most improved.
Oh God.
That's wild.
So did I get everybody or am I missing
Not everyone, yeah, that's everyone.
Oh, sweet. Wow,
some of the guys,
Brandon Bass, dude, what the heck?
Hanging on to Brandon Bass is crazy. But here's some guys like on the perimeter. One of your Bulls guys actually made it here, like 11th. Like he was like 30 assists away from making it. But Mirotic.
Oh God, yeah, that pick and roll game early in the year was pretty solid.
Yeah. Then Rudy Gay was near here. I'm trying to remember. Like, was it the Kings? I think it had to be.
I had to assume it was the Kings stint. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you got KCP. which is
Makes sense.
Lakers, I guess.
That's
Lakers,
probably the Lakers team. Yeah, a lot of kickouts probably.
Then you got some other like random some other Lakers here, Kyle Kuzma, Jared Sullinger. I thought would have potentially made this list.
Oh wow, that would have been a pull. I'm not gonna lie, that would have been a pull. If he was top 10, I think I would have missed out on that one.
Yeah, but he was definitely like a guy again, and one of those staples of the center rotation of Boston at that early time. But yeah. Rajon Rondo, congrats on your retirement. These are the guys that you assisted the most in your career. You have Brandon Bass there. So, yeah, pretty damn good list. But, yeah, if you want any other quizzes you want to see, we might do some playoff-related ones coming in the future as well, now that the playoffs are around. But let us know down below if you want to talk about this quiz and also some future quizzes that we could do. But, Jay, another end of another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Why do you tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Dude, the next time you guys hear our voices, it's going to be playoff basketball time. Like, that's crazy. Like, we finally got to this point. This is me and TV's first full season covering basketball start to finish. Now we're getting the postseason action coming. And, like, we plan on doing this a lot different than we did last year because now we have a full season on our belt, which means that there's going to be a lot more coming. We're going to do a lot more deep dives. And I think that we're going to approach the postseason a lot different from a lot of the mainstream podcasts and TV networks that everybody watches in terms of really getting into these games. We're going to do it on the podcast side, but we're also going to give you guys a lot of short form content to be able to really retain these games as well.
100%. Look, man, the Daily NBA Picks Challenge is going to end in a few days. You know we're going to have to fill that content. So you're going to see a lot of playoff stuff coming on over these next couple months. You know this NBA playoffs just feels like a whole other season itself. So be ready, get locked in, and we're going to crown a new 2024 champions very soon. So be on the lookout for that content going forward. But yeah, another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you follow our individual accounts again down below. Routine Jumper TV on basketball. Show love on the social media is the best place for daily NBA content. YouTube, podcast networks, wherever you listen to us, we appreciate all of you. And yeah, get ready for some playoff talk. It's going to be coming very soon. It's another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.